I work with a couple who recently decided that they would like to retire as soon as they can. But even though they had a £1 million investment portfolio, the chances of them being able to retire with the lifestyle that they wanted did not look good. But by doing something that went against the grain, something that most people would never think of, they were able to leave corporate life and start living the retirement lifestyle they were looking for. Although this is an example of a couple with larger assets, the lessons to be learned here are applicable to everyone and may enable you to start living the life that you're looking for much earlier than you ever thought possible. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is James. I am a financial planner and this is a place where you can learn to make smarter financial decisions. John and Jess are a couple that I started working with a few years back. They initially reached out to me because John had taken on a new role as a chief technology officer, earning considerably more than he had in the past. At that time, John was excited about the prospects of this new role. It had a lot more responsibility, but he was looking forward to the challenge, which is why I was surprised when, sometime later, I received a call from Jess asking if we could look at the possibility of John retiring earlier than we had originally planned, ideally as soon as possible. At this point, they were both 55. They had 2 children, aged 18 and 15. In John's role as a CTO, he was earning a base salary of £200,000 with share options and bonuses on top. Jess used to work in marketing, but stopped 12 years ago to spend more time with the kids. In terms of assets, John had £500,000 in a defined contribution pension. Jess had £200,000 in hers, and they each had ISAs worth £150,000. So £1 million in total. And they also had a home worth $1.4 million with 2 years left on the mortgage. We got together for a meeting, and at the start, John said that although his job was stressful at times, he enjoyed the challenge, but would just like to understand when he might be able to stop. I thought that there might be a little bit more to this, so I asked Jess what she thought of John's relationship with his work. She said that since John had taken on this new role, I've seen a big change in him. Coming home stressed, unable to switch off, with the weekends being a brief moment to catch his breath before being thrown back into the maelstrom. John agreed that things had been difficult of late. The role was more consuming than he thought it would be, but he said that a lot of that was related to short-term problems that the company was facing. Jess challenged him on this and said, "It was only last week that you were telling me that there always seems to be another thing that crops up. You said that if it carries on like this, it's going to kill you. I know you were joking, but you're more stressed than I've ever seen you. You're complaining that you no longer have time to exercise or to keep up with your mates. And I'm concerned for your health." Jess was really holding John to account. And this was a prime example of why it's so important to include your other half in these types of conversations, because they have a unique perspective. They see things that you don't and will call you out when you're not being true to yourself. At this point, John opened up a bit and said that the CTO role was a lot more stressful than he realized. He'd recently had to restructure several teams and let people go, and he found it hard not to take that stuff home with him. He said that for as long as I can remember, I've aspired to be in that top job, and I've worked really hard to get myself into this position. But now I'm here. The weight of that responsibility is much heavier than I expected. Yes, I'm earning more than ever before, but I feel like I have no opportunity to enjoy it. But what other option is there? We've still got 2 years left on our mortgage and the kids are about to go to university, so I don't think I can afford to stop. I said, okay, well, let's take a look. They'd said that in retirement, they wanted to be able to spend £5,000 per month, plus a £10,000 annual budget for traveling until they're 70. They still had 2 years left on their mortgage, which was another £2,500 per month, and they wanted to contribute £10,000 per year to the costs of each of their children going to university. They were both going to qualify for full state pensions, and they had £1 million worth of assets. But even with that, the prospects of them achieving this lifestyle did not look good. This blue line represents how their liquid assets are set to grow or to decumulate over time. And we can see that based on the assumptions that we've made, they are projected to have depleted their investment by age 77. This is not really surprising, given that in their first year, their expenses are £110,000, which equates to an 11% withdrawal rate, which is really, really high, especially when planning for a 35+ year retirement. As a general rule of thumb, a 4 to 5% starting withdrawal rate is often a sustainable range. But again, that depends on how old you are, how you're invested, and what state pensions or other income you have coming in. To make this projection, we've had to make some linear assumptions about investment growth and inflation. But in reality, they're both unpredictable and volatile. So there is a very real chance that they could run out of money even before this. But if you're using sensible assumptions, this type of modeling is a great starting point because it allows us to visualize the key events and test the plan's feasibility. In this case, we can see that unless they got very lucky with their investments, it's highly unlikely that this plan is going to work. On seeing this, Jess was really disappointed. And for John, it just confirmed his expectation that he was going to need to continue on in his role. But before admitting defeat, I wanted to zoom out a bit and understand a bit more about what they were actually trying to achieve. So I asked John, what does retirement mean to him? And he said, I want freedom of my time and freedom of my mind. At the moment, my calendar is dictated by other people, and my mind is consumed by other people's problems. I want to be free of that, to spend time doing the things that I want, to spend time with Jess, to travel. Since we've had the kids, it's been really hard to get away and see the places that we said that we would. And yeah, my focus on my career has come at the cost of my health and my relationship with my friends. And I want to spend time focusing on those things. With the rest of my time, though, I would still need to be working on something. If I was sitting around doing nothing, I would go mad. And I said, okay, so we've talked a lot about the things that you don't like about work, but what do you like? And he said, well, to be honest, James, at times I'm not sure. Being a CTO is something that I've had my sights set on for a very long time. As an engineer, I worked with several great CTOs and I aspired to be like them. It seemed like the natural progression. But now I'm here, I realize what you have to sacrifice. The hours, the responsibility, the stress of managing other people. And I don't think I realized how much I miss building stuff, cutting code, working with new technologies. That's why I got into engineering in the first place, and that's what I love. And now I don't get to do so much of that. And I thought that what John had just said there was a fantastic insight, something that I see happening a lot. Social norms and higher pay packets lead us to assume that the only direction that we can take our careers is either up the corporate ladder or to become an entrepreneur. We're conditioned to look up to these leaders and aspire to be like them, to want their responsibilities, to earn what they earn, and most importantly, to be held in such high esteem by our peers. That's what we see from the outside. But what's not visible is the sacrifices these people had to make to get to where they are. The sacrifices they continue to make with their families, relationships, their physical and mental health. And whether you're looking up to a professional athlete, a small business owner, or just a senior manager in a business, if we knew the true costs of being in that position, most of us would probably realize that that's not for us. But unfortunately, like in John's case, you often won't realize the true costs until you get there, which means we often spend decades of our lives making sacrifices, putting off living our lives, trying to get to a position that we think will give us fulfillment, because we've been conditioned to think that that is what success looks like. We believe that once we get to that next rung on the ladder, that that's the point when things will get better, that that's the point when we'll be able to start living our lives. But what if there is a better way? A way that you can start enjoying life now? I said to John, let me just break down what you've just told me. You don't want to retire to nothing. You want to keep active and you want to keep doing work that you enjoy, which is building stuff, coding, and working with new technologies. It sounds like even if you did have enough money to retire, you would still want to keep working, but in a way that allows you to work on the things that you're interested in, without management responsibilities, a role that gives you control of your calendar and the flexibility to travel and to take the time to focus on your health and your relationship. So if we can find something that fits in this intersection, perhaps we can find a path forward where your work fits around the lifestyle that you're looking for, rather than the other way around. But as we already know, to achieve the lifestyle that John wants, he's going to need to earn something. So how much? This is the thing. John and Jess have already saved a huge amount of money. They don't necessarily need to save any more. They just need to give it time to grow. So if they can cover most of their costs for a few years, they can coast their way to financial independence. John and Jess have said that whilst their children are at university, they're still likely to be pretty homebound. So if we can assume that John keeps working in this new fashion until he's 62, earning £60,000 per year, our projection now has them stretching right to the end. But there's even more we can do here. In past tax years, John's earnings have meant that he's only been able to contribute £4,000 per year into his pension, which is why they've built up significant amounts in ISAs. But if John starts earning £60,000 per year, he can use his ISAs to make pension contributions of £60,000 per year. To do this, he could make a £48,000 contribution to his SIP. HMRC would then add 20% tax relief on top, and he would then need to claim the additional £2,000 of higher rate tax relief from his self-assessment tax return. Or a more tax-efficient solution would be to sacrifice his new salary straight into his pension, right down to the minimum wage, which is the most that you can do, and then make a small contribution to his SIP and fund their remaining expenditure from their ISAs. If they did this, it would leave them £215,000 better off. And that's in today's money, which shows why it's so important to make the most of every single tax planning opportunity. No one knows what will happen in the future. Investment returns may end up being worse than we've projected, or inflation could end up being higher. But what I like about this plan is that not only does it have a decent margin for error, they also have their home equity that they could fall back on if required. But if John can find a new sustainable work-life balance, it's much easier for him to choose to continue to work for longer if required, without feeling like he's sacrificing too much of his life. And as I say in a lot of my videos, this flexibility is the really important thing that helps you to cope with the uncertainty of retirement. But even though this all sounds logical, it's much easier said than done. John has already sacrificed a huge amount to get to where he is in his career. Years of working, of training, and much of his identity is wrapped up in his role as a CTO. And to walk away from that, to walk away from the money, to walk away from that status is really hard, especially when there are so many other people who would kill to be in his position. But what John needs to work out is whether he wants to be chasing his own definition of success or someone else's, and to avoid falling into a sunk cost fallacy. Again, that's easy to say, it's hard to do, and that is why these things take time. It took John about 6 months to come around to this idea, and in that time we had several other meetings to look at other ways that they could achieve their goals through downsizing, reducing expenditure, and thinking about how they were going to pay for things like long-term care if they need it. But eventually, John decided to just start opening some doors, start having some conversations with people and see if he could find a role that would fit his criteria. It took him another 6 months to find it. And even now he has. I expect him to keep iterating on that and trying new things and designing his work to fit around the lifestyle that he wants. The traditional view of retirement is that you need to keep climbing the ladder, to keep working and putting off living your life until you have enough money to never work again. But this view leads us to keep sacrificing the present for a future that may never arrive. And even if we do get there, we're often not satisfied because you need to retire to something. You need a purpose. Without one, you'll age quickly and die. Now, many people find their purpose in their friends, family, or their hobbies. But for some, it's about having the freedom to work on the things that they want to. So why not start doing that earlier? Find something that allows you to cover your costs or to supplement your income and coast into retirement whilst living more along the way. If after watching this, you're still sitting there thinking, but James, I don't feel like I have anywhere near enough to even start thinking about this. Well, you need to now watch this video here where I help you to unpick the big question of how much you actually need to retire. See you there.